Today's daf is Shabbat Kuf Bet. Today's daf is sponsored by Ellie and Karen Wilczek in memory of Oz Wilczek, Zichrono Livracha, and by Dina and Mark Levy and family in honor of Dina's father, Rabbi Avi Weiss, in honor of his birthday. Rabbi Weiss is a pioneer for women's learning and a true model for Am Yisrael. May he continue teaching in good health for many more years to come. We're going to get started from the top of Kuf Bet today. If you remember, we ended yesterday. We had the Mishnah, which talked about ksharim that are not allowed. Those are ties, knots that stay and last for a very long time. I remember last time on the first cycle I learned this, I had some communication with my daughter who was in Sofim. They're always tying knots, or in the army, they always tie these. It's a whole knot tying thing going on there. So those are the real kesher shel kayama. If you make a serious knot that's going to last. Versus, we then said, there seems to be implied in our Mishnah, even though it doesn't say so, that there are some that are forbidden from the rabbis. And then the Mishnah listed all the ones that are actually allowed lechatchila. So the Gemara is going to go through all the ones in our Mishnah mentioned that are allowed lechatchila, meaning you can tie them no matter what. You have no problem tying these on Shabbat, and kind of saying, why was this mentioned? Isn't it obvious that you could tie the following things on Shabbat? So, for example, mafteach chalukah, kosher mafteach chalukah. So, what's this? It seems to be the Koran has a picture of a shirt that has a tie at the top, okay, where you kind of tie the shirt closed. So, every time you take off the shirt, you open it. It could be ties on the side. It could be any sort of tie on her cloak to allow her to open and close it. So, the Gemara says, Pshita, obviously this is allowed to do. First of all, how else are you going to wear your clothes? And second of all, every time you take off your clothes, which assuming you take them off every day, then you're going to untie it. So you're obviously tying and untying all the time. That's clearly not even close to what's forbidden, which is a kesher shel kayama, which is a kesher that lasts for forever, basically. Right? We're going to have kesher that lasts forever is doraita. Kesher that you untie and tie periodically will be forbidden by the rabbis, but something that you're constantly tying and untying, let's say on a daily basis or close to a daily basis, is going to be allowed. So why do you even need to tell us this? It's obvious. So the Gemara, and they're going to ask this on every line in the Mishnah, basically. Lo tzricha de'itle trei dashe. Okay, it's a case where there's two ties. So in the Koran, for example, they have a tie on the top and then one below it. Rashi suggests either one above, one below, or one on the left, one on the right, in which case you take it off. You only need, let's say you have a shirt and you have on the side, you have a tie there on either side. Well, in order to take the shirt off, you only need to untie one side. You don't need to untie both sides. So you might have thought, you might have thought one of them is canceled out, basically, meaning you're only going to end up untying one and not the other. So maybe the other one turns into some sort of kesher shel kayama, because it will be there and you won't need to untie it all the time. And this is the answer they're going to give in almost every case, which is that's why you might have thought, because maybe there's two and maybe only one you're untying regularly, kamash malan. Therefore, it comes to teach you, no, even so, neither of these are a kesher at all, shel kayama, and therefore you're allowed to tie and untie these on Shabbat. Now we have the strings that are tied together, that are knotted together on the woman's hairnet. So again, pshita, what do you mean? Every time you tie your hairnet, you have to tie the knots. So isn't it obvious that it's tied and untied all the time? Lo tzricha de revichale. We're talking about what if she tied it very loosely? Ma'u detema mishlaf shalfala kamash malan di isha chasa al sara umishra sharyala. So you might have thought that maybe she takes it off, right? In other words, she might take off her hairnet. If it's loose, she might take off her hairnet without actually untying the knots, right? Like people who slip their shoes on and off without untying their shoes. Kamash malan, that actually she wouldn't do that. She'd actually untie the knots, because if you pull off the hairnet, what will happen? Your hair might start being pulled out, and women are careful about their hair. They don't want their hair to start falling out. So therefore, she's going to untie them every time she puts it on. By the way, there's a sheet for today. If someone wants to post it in the Zoom, you can post it in the chat. But it'll be helpful certainly later in the daf to follow. So here already we're getting to our first chart on the page. Uritzuot min alvis sandal. So now we're going to talk about the shoes. So shoes and sandals. And we're going to see that shoes and sandals are a little bit different. The halach is kind of the same. It depends on the scenario. Itmar. Now we're going to have a bit of a problem. In our Mishnah, it said you can tie and untie shoelaces, straps of your sandal. Seems totally allowed, which makes sense. But now the Gemara is going to say, Itmar, it was said, Hitiv l'tzuot min al v'sandal, tani chada chayav chatat, v'tani idach patur haval asur, v'tani idach mutar l'chatchila. It was said, normally Itmar is an introduction to a machloket between two Amoraim. In this case, that's not the scenario. It's just, Itmar also just means it was said. So what was said? It was said that if somebody unties his shoelaces or his shoes, let's say, his shoes or his sandals, it was said in one Braita, it says it's forbidden by Torah law. In one Braita, it said it's forbidden only by rabbinic law. And in one Braita, it says it's allowed entirely, which actually matches our Mishnah. So the question is going to be, what's going on here? Kashya min al, kashya sandala sandal. Now here they split it. They say there's a problem with all the shoes and there's a problem with all the sandals. The reason why they split it is because they're going to basically say that it all depends on the situation. And the situation for shoes is different from sandals. But they're going to have to show 3 situations for shoes and 3 situations for sandals where you'll have one type that you're tying and untying that will be forbidden by Torah law, one type by rabbinic, and one type that will be permitted. So how does it go? Min al lo kasha. So we're starting with the shoes. When you're talking about the person who makes the shoe, the shoemaker, when he puts the straps into the shoe, well, that's a kesher shel kayama. He ties them in. Those are going to last forever. That's why he's making your shoes, so that they last. His kind of tie, his kind of knots are serious ones, and therefore you're obligated by Torah law. Patur haval asur b'derabbanan. Here's an interesting one. We're talking about the ties that rabbis make in their shoes. Now, why do rabbis have different shoes than anybody else? Seems a little weird. Well, we're going to explain. There's different explanations. Nobody really knows, obviously. So again, we're going to say, again, everyone's going to kind of look and try to come up with an answer. Here's where creativity comes in. So Rabbi Yonatan Milunil and the Ran say that what's the difference between rabbis and other people? Well, rabbis don't walk around so much. They're usually in the Beit Midrash. So if they're in the Beit Midrash, then they basically, when they tie their shoes, they tie them very loosely because they're not walking. Right? Think about when you go exercise, you make sure your shoelaces are tied extra tight so that your foot doesn't buckle. So same thing here. When they're in the Beit Midrash, they don't really care and they want to kind of slip their shoes on and off. So they tie them very loosely, and because of that, their knots are not really serious knots. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is they actually never take off their shoes. Why? And it's actually they're very solidly on, but they don't take off their shoes very often because they often even sleep in their shoes, okay? Because they're so serious about their learning that they'll sleep in their clothes and they'll sleep in their shoes, and they'll take them off about once a week on Friday night. And then, since that's the case, again, we want to find where they're in an in-between category, where they tie them, but they don't tie them so well. So in the first case, they tie them, but they tie them loosely because, sorry, I didn't explain. According to Rabbi Yonatan Milunil, they tie them loosely and they put their shoes on and off, which means that they don't untie them very frequently because they slip them on and off without actually untying them. And therefore, their knots stay tied for a long time. Likewise, with the second explanation, they're saying it's not that they're loose, it's that they're very tight, but it's that the first one was that they slip them on and off without untying them. This one is that they never actually take them off because they're always learning and they sleep with their shoes and only take them off once a week. So therefore, they're in this in-between, where there's so much al-kayama, whereas average people take off their shoes every day. And then that would be allowed entirely. Next case, mutar lechatchila b'dibnei mechoza. People in mechoza, we've seen them a lot, they're wealthy. And Rashi explains that because they're wealthy, their shoes are tied solidly on because they don't want to walk around. It looks silly if you're walking around with very loose tied shoes. And therefore, they take them off every night because if your shoes are very tight, then you're going to have to untie them every night. If you think about, right, some people slip their shoes on and off without untying the laces, they're too lazy, right? And other people untie their laces every night. So it's the same kind of idea. So if you untie them every night, then it's going to be allowed. If you don't untie them every night, then it's actually a problem. Sandala sandalo kasha. So now we're going to get to the sandals. We're talking about the Arab merchants, who the Rashi says they're the Yishmaelim, that they basically tie the straps in their sandals very seriously, and they leave them for a long time. Patura v'lasur b'dechumrata. Okay, we'll see what this is in a minute. Dekatre inhu. Okay, they're the ties that regular people make. And as if I were to make a shoe and I were to put it in my shoe, I'm not a shoemaker. I don't really know what I'm doing. It'll last maybe for a little while. Rashi says maybe Shabbat or Shavua, maybe for a week, maybe for a month, but it's not shel kayama. It's not like a real, like the Arab merchants who really know what they're doing. You know, I'm just a layman. I don't really know what I'm doing when it comes to shoemaking, but I can kind of strap something in seriously that might last, more than the average day. This is an interesting one. If two people wear the same sandal and they're different shoe sizes, they're going to have to adjust it each time, and they're going to have to untie it and retie it to fit their shoe, their foot. So I thought, what did I think of? In the car, you get into the car. Now I have all these kids who are driving age. So every time you get in the car, you have to readjust your seat, because everybody adjusts it a different way, right? Everybody has this one's bigger, the taller, they like to lean back, they like to be forward. It's that same idea that if you share someone with someone, then you're going to end up having to switch it all the time to adjust it. Or, it's actually a better example, the shoresh. My kids, I remember at some point they were sharing shoresh and those sandals. And they have all these adjustments in them. You can adjust the back and you can adjust the top, and they would get annoyed when it was one kid, it was their shoresh, and someone kept borrowing them and they kept adjusting it to a different size, and then the other one kept getting annoyed. Why do you keep changing my shoresh every time I put them on? I have to readjust it. So that's even a better example because it's with shoes and with sandals specifically. And here we're going to have a story about it. Not just I bring these anecdotes, but they're also in the Gemara. They did kid to Rabbi Yehuda. The Rabbi Yehuda achua de Rav Salach Hasida. He was the brother of Rav Salach Hasida. Haveleahu zuga de sandale. He had a pair of sandals. Zimnin de nafik be'iyu, zimnin de nafik be'yenuka. Sometimes he wore them, sometimes his child wore them. Interesting. You would think maybe two grown-ups, but no, actually his son also, or his daughter, wore the same sandals. Ata lekamei de Abaye. So that he went before Abaye to ask, Amarle ki agavna mai. What about a sandal like mine? Can I untie it on Shabbat? Amarle chayav chatat. If you do this, it's forbidden by Torah law. Now, if you're paying attention, what did we just say a minute ago? It's mutar lechatchila. It's allowed. So why is he telling him chayav chatat? And interestingly, Rav Yehuda, the brother of Rav Salach Hasida, doesn't take his answer so easily. He says to him, Amarle hashte patur v'lasur kakashile chayav chatat ka'amartali. If you had told me it was forbidden by rabbinic law, I would have taken issue with you. And now you're telling me that it's asur midoraita? How could this be? So the who is it? Abaye. Abaye looks at him and says, "My timer. Why? Why would you have taken issue with me?" So he says, "Amalei mishum de b'chol nami." Because on a regular day, zimnin nefikna be'ana, zimnin nefika be'yenuka. Sometimes I wear them, sometimes my son wears them. We're constantly changing it. Amarle, so Abaye says to him, ihachi mutar lechatchila. Oh, if that's the situation, then it's obviously allowed. So what do you learn from this story? You learn that when you go ask a question to a rabbi or a doctor or whatever it might be, give all the details. Because if you don't give all the details, you can't expect them to give you the proper answer. Number two, you learn, if you hear an answer that you're not happy with, and you don't think is right, don't just sit back and say, oh, that's what the rabbi said or that's what the doctor said. But you should ask, because maybe they didn't fully understand exactly what you were asking. And number three, if you're the rabbi or the doctor or whoever it might be who's giving advice to someone, you should make sure that you have all the facts before you give your answer. So all of these are lessons to be learned from this story. Next story. We're now going to have two stories and we're going to compare them. Two stories of situations where somebody's sandal tore on Shabbat, which is going to lead us into a whole thing about a shoe that tears on Shabbat. Is it muktzah? Is it considered still a utensil, a kli, right? Like a shoe? Is it not considered a shoe? What do we do with it? And we're going to see. And from here, we're going to get off on a big tangent, which is a little bit more complicated than what we've had so far in today's daf. Rabbi Yirmiyah have a ka'aza b'trei to Rabbi Yavau b'Karmelit. Rabbi Yirmiyah was walking behind Rabbi Yavau in a Karmelit. Ifsik ritzuaz sandale, and his sandal broke. Amarle ma'ini yavid. So he says, what should I do? Amarle shkol gemi lach. Take a moist reed or a moist something growing. Dechaze l'machal behema, which an animal. It's could be animal food. Bikroch ilave, meaning you can't take something that's not really for animals because it's muktzah. So take something that's not muktzah and tie it around your shoe. It's a very, this is classic, right? You're walking and your thing rips. What do you do? How do you walk? So take something temporary, fix it up, and then you can walk with it. Abai have a kai kamed Rav Yosef. Now, second story. Abai comes before Rav Yosef. Now, the first story happened at a Carmelite, which is kind of like a Rishut Rabim Midirabbanan. Now we're in a Chatzer. So Abai was in front of Rav Yosef in a Chatzer, Iflik le'ritzua. Now his strap breaks. Amar le ma'yavid le. So he says to Rav Yosef, what can I do? Amar le shavke. Leave it there. You can't touch your shoe because it's muktzah. It's broken now. It's muktzah. So he says, Rabbi says to him, why was this any different than when Rav Yirmiya's shoe broke and he was allowed to take it? So what does he answer him? Hatam lo minta, hachaminta. In that case, it was in a Carmelite. Now, in a Carmelite, what's going to happen? It's not protected. Someone could steal his shoe. In that case, we allowed him to carry it. We allowed him not to carry it, but to fix it. The whole issue is if you're going to fix it, isn't the shoe muktzah? It's not a kli anymore. It should be muktzah. How do we allow you to fix it? They're not worried about tikkun kli for some reason. I assume it's because it's very temporary what you're doing. But because it would get stolen there, it's a problem. But you're in a chatzer, in a courtyard. Courtyard, not a lot of people come through. It's very unlikely someone's going to steal it in your courtyard. Therefore, I'm telling you, it's muktzah and you have to leave it. Now, the first of all, I have a question. Why all of a sudden are we allowing to carry something, to deal with something muktzah when it's just what? So some people say it's hefsed mamon, right? We're worried it's a loss of money. That's the issue. Because of that, we allow you to carry something muktzah. Now, do we generally say that about muktzah, that something you can use something muktzah if it's going to be some sort of financial loss? We don't usually say that. So it's a little bit strange. So other people answer, which is also a difficult answer, that maybe they were worried. We have this general concept that Adam bahul al mamono. People get very worked up about their possessions and losing their money. And therefore, they were worried that maybe he would carry it in the Carmelite. So they said, better let him fix it and walk with it than to carry it in the Carmelite. Now, again, carrying it in the Carmelite is hotza'ah, right? That's carrying. But it's only D'Rabbanan also, and muktzah is D'Rabbanan. So it's a little bit of it's not like we're worried he was going to carry it for Amud and Rishut Rabim. There I would understand. Here it's in a Carmelite. Why they're allowing that, it's a bit of a question. But in any case, that's the difference between the two stories. One was in a Carmelite, and because we were worried about the financial loss, we allow it, and in the Chatzer, not. But now, Abai asks another question, V'ha-manahu. But isn't a broken sandal still considered a utensil? Now, first of all, some people say, first of all, why is it not like any broken kli? Well, let's see, I'll finish the sentence and then I'll explain the question. Why is it a kli still? Because now here's an assumption. There's two ways it could tear. It could tear on the outside, it could tear on the inside. If it tears on the outside, it can be fixed. And if it tears on the inside, it can be fixed. However, if you fix the tear on the outside, it's going to be very embarrassing to walk around with a shoe that's very noticeable that it had torn. Okay, the assumption is once it tears, it's noticeable. And even if you fix it, everyone's going to see because it's on the outside. But if it's on the inner part of the shoe, then people don't see. And then you would fix it. We're going to see this distinction coming up. And then if you would fix it, people would wear it. So now they're going to say, now the other thing you have to understand is nowadays we wouldn't ever switch our left with our right. First of all, you look ridiculous, right? Sometimes little kids do that. They put the wrong shoe on and then everyone starts laughing. Oh, look what you did. You put the wrong shoe. But in those days, apparently the shoes were symmetrical and you could actually flip the left with the right. So they say here, if you want, you could switch the left and the right, which means, now think about it. If it's symmetrical and if it's on the outside, and it's something that if you were fix it would be noticeable and you'd be embarrassed to walk around. So therefore, this shouldn't be called a kli anymore because it can't be fixed. But theoretically, it could be fixed because even if you wouldn't wear it on the outside, you could just switch the shoe and put the left one on the right side. And then the outside will become the inside. So theoretically, this kli, even though right now it's broken, since it could potentially be fixed and be reworn, it actually should still be considered a kli because it still has use. Even though this moment it doesn't, it will once you fix it. And therefore, and since you won't be embarrassed to walk around like that because you could flip it, even if it's on the outside, it could be on the inside, on the other foot, it should be still considered a kli. Now, if it's a kli, it's not muktzah, right? That's always what it is. If it's something of importance, then it doesn't become muktzah. It only becomes muktzah once it can't be used anymore. So Abai basically says, can't you switch it from right to left? Some of the Mepharshim ask a better question, which is, why wouldn't it be a kli? Because at this point you have, I'm assuming it's like a piece of a sole. So it's true it can't be used as a shoe, but it could be used to cover your kli. Remember, we talked about all sorts of broken kelim are still usable because you can use them for all sorts of purposes. So people say because it was used for a shoe and you're going to want to fix it, so you're only going to want to fix it to be a shoe, you're not going to want to use it for other things that might ruin it, right? Imagine you put it as a cover and then it gets wet and ruined and full of wine or whatever it might be. So therefore, nobody would use it as a cover for anything. And that's why the only thing it could be used for is a shoe. But his question is, it still could be used as a shoe. So why are you saying it's not a kli? So here comes the complicated answer. He says the following line, which we're going to have the Gemara is going to have some time till they figure out what this means. Amar le, mita kamitaretz Rabbi Yochanan aliba de Rabbi Yehuda, shma mina halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, this means, okay, let's backtrack. Rabbi Yehuda is going to hold that if it's torn on the outside, it's no longer a kli. That's the first thing you have to know. So therefore, Rav Yosef says to Abaye, Rabbi Yochanan answered a question on a braita, according to Rabbi Yehuda's understanding, that if it's torn on the outside, it's no longer a kli. And it has to do with tumah, by the way, impurities. And therefore, we're going to assume that he must hold like Rabbi Yehuda. And if Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Yehuda, well, I'm going to hold like Rabbi Yehuda too. And Rabbi Yehuda doesn't think this is a kli. Once it's torn on the outside, even though theoretically you could switch it to the other foot, he doesn't think that, and he thinks it's a problem. So now the Gemara wants to know, Mahi, where's this Rabbi Yehuda, and where is Rabbi Yochanan answering some question according to Rabbi Yehuda's opinion? So this will take us a little while. Mahi, Titanya, as it says in the following bright, Sandal shenifsteku shte oznav o shte tarsiotav. Okay, there's oznaim and there's tarsiot. As usual, we don't know exactly what these parts are. So oznaim, some people say, are some sort of hand, like a place that you could lift the shoe. Sometimes on the back of a sneaker, there's a little hook, like a little loop there that you can hold the shoe by the loop. So something like that. There's some sort of handle, like a strap that you can hold the shoe with, or maybe, I don't know if it's to hold like that, but some sort of straps to hold, or these loops. Right? I have a pair of sandals like this where there's two loops on the side, and then the strap goes through the loops. Right? Kind of like the shoresh are like that, I think, where they have loops and then the strap goes through. Or tarsiotav maybe are the loops. If you say that the oznaim is the handle, then the tarsiot are the loops, or maybe the tarsiot are the straps. So anyway, we're assuming there's two straps and there's two oznaim and two tarsiot. If both of them tear, o shenital kol hakaf shelo, or if the whole sole breaks, tahor. Then let's say you had a kli. We're talking again about impurities. The kli was impure to begin with, right? At some point it became impure, and not to begin with, but at some point it became impure. Now, what do we always know? When the kli breaks, it's no longer impure because it's not a kli. If it's not a kli, it's no longer, right? In order for something to have impurity, it has to be important, significant. Once it's broken, it's no longer significant. So once it's broken, if these were to break, okay, both of them, or the whole sole, then the kli is no longer tahor, the shoe, because it's not significant anymore. It can't be used. If only one of them broke, though, or the majority of the sole, some people say, how could that be? The majority of the sole would make it a problem. You can't really walk in a shoe, the majority of the sole. Some people actually say there's a problem with the girsa, and it's not correct. And it should be maybe part of a minority of the sole. But either which way, at this point, it's now tameh because it's no longer a kli. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, nifseka pnimit tameh achitzona tahor. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. It's tameh. It's still impure because it's still a shoe, right? This still can be used because it's only one of them. But Rabbi Yehuda says it depends which one. And here we get to Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. If it's the pnimit, it's tameh. If it's the inner one, then we know it'll be fixed and it'll still be a shoe. But if it's the outer one, even if you fix it, no one's going to wear this shoe anymore. It's embarrassing. Tahor. And that's what we're going to say, the shoe, right? We're going to say that Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Yehuda, which means that the shoe at this point, not only for purity and impurity purposes, but we're going to say the same thing for Shabbat. In fact, someone asked a question a while ago about, a group of women asked me, we want to understand better, what's the connection between Tahor, about Tumah and Tara, impurity, laws for impurity, and Shabbat. Why are we always using the same criteria? So today we're going to get to maybe a good answer to that. Amar Ula, B'item Rabba Bar Bachana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So here comes the line about Rabbi Yochanan. Kimachloket li'inyan Tumah. Rabbi Yochanan says, just like they argue for Tumah purposes, kach machloket li'inyan Shabbat. Okay, he basically says exactly what they had asked me about. When it comes to impurities, if something's a kli or not, right? And again, if it's a kli, it's going to keep its impurity. If it's not a kli, then it's going to lose its status of impure and it's going to become pure. That's going to be the same for Shabbat, for muktzah. Okay, if something's muktzah, it's going to be something that's not usable at all. So if it's not usable, then it's muktzah. If it is usable, then it's a kli, and then it's not muktzah. So He says it's all the same. But avalola inyan chalitza. But they might argue about Tumah, and the machloket about Tumah is going to apply also to Shabbat, but it's not going to apply for chalitza. Okay? Meaning, this will be a shoe, right? The outer versus the inner. Is the outer different than the inner? Okay? That whole machloket Rabbi Yehuda, that's all about Tumah and Tara and about Shabbat, but not for laws of chalitza. What's chalitza? Somebody dies, a man dies without children. His wife is supposed to marry the brother. If the brother or close relative doesn't want to marry her, she undoes his shoe, she takes off his shoe, and she spits in front of him. So she has to undo his shoe. He needs a shoe. So now we're going to say, but it's not the same criteria for what constitutes a shoe when it comes to Tum and Tara and laws of Shabbat. Now, why would one thing to distinguish? And this is why I thought the people who asked me this question, they were trying to figure out why. And as I said very simply, well, Shabbat and if it's a kli across the board for anything, for any situation. But this seems to be saying, well, maybe it's different for laws of chalitza. In other words, something can be called a utensil when it comes to Shabbat and Tumah, and those two are more similar. Why would they be more similar and chalitza is different? Maybe I thought to suggest both of those have to do with kedusha. There's either kedushat hazman, that Shabbat is a sanctified day, and Tumah has to do with the Beit HaMikdash, sanctified place. So maybe the laws for what's significant are the same in both those because of the sanctification aspect. Whereas chalitza doesn't have to do with sanctity, it's just some ceremony, you need a shoe. Anyway, it's a good theory, except that in the end, they're going to say it's actually the same across the board. They're going to change the gear, so I'm already telling you the end, which is actually going to be, and for chalitza, they have the same thing, which would then say that really, my first answer that I gave them, which was that all utensils, it's all just a matter of, do we define this as a utensil or not? And that's across the board. You need something to be defined as a utensil for laws of muktzah, you need it for chalitza, you need it for tum and tara, for all issues. It's just a matter of, is this significant, is it not? So, and also for carrying, right? We saw it with laws of carrying. Is this a significant enough item to be carried? Anyway, they want to understand now, why would it be, right? So in order to say this, you have to explain that one of the opinions agrees with the other about chalitza. So who agrees with who? So Havina about Rabbi, they asked the question about this. Rabbi Yochanan Aliba Daman, who is he talking about? Who agrees with the other when it comes to chalitza? Is it Rabbi Yehuda who's going to say it's still a shoe for chalitza? Or is it the rabbis who are going to say, oh no, for chalitza, I agree, it's no longer considered a shoe. So, if you're going to say it's the rabbis, if you're going to say, you'd have to say like this, right? It's according to the rabbis. They say it's a kli for Shabbat. It's a kli for purity and impurity purposes, right? Even if it's torn on the outside, it's only one of them is torn. We still view this as a shoe. Both for Tumah, so therefore it will still be impure. For Shabbat, it will still be a kli, so it's not muktzah. Avalola chalitza. But you can't use this kind of shoe for chalitza. So now they're going to say, how could you possibly say that? Because we already learned that you can take, even though you're supposed to do the right shoe and the right foot, as long as if you put your left shoe on the right foot, you're allowed to do chalitza. So once you do that, then who cares if it ripped on one side? You can always switch the side around. And again, it should be still looked at as a shoe because it could be fixed and it could be a shoe, and therefore can't say that. So it can't be he would be more machmir when it comes to chalitza for what kind of shoe you need. The ela leave it to Rabbi Yehuda, but if you say it's according to Rabbi Yehuda, midil inyan tuma lav manahu, inyan Shabbat nami lav manahu. This for tuma it's not a shoe. For Shabbat it's not a shoe. Aval lo lechalitza, but then you would say, but not for chalitza. For chalitza, he thinks it's a shoe. That would make sense maybe, because chalitza again you can swap feet, and therefore maybe it would still be a shoe because you could wear it. But imer damrinan chatzah shel smol b'yamin chalitzatak shera hecha dilamilte manahu aval hacha dilamilte lav manahu. You're comparing two different things. It's hard to say that Rabbi Yehuda would say if the one is torn on the outside, we don't consider it a shoe for laws of impurity. We don't consider it a shoe for Shabbat. But we do consider it a shoe for chalitza because, shall you mean you could switch? That doesn't make sense because there, when we said you could use the left on the right, that's talking about a shoe that's intact. This is a shoe that's not intact. This shoe is actually missing the strap. So how could we allow a shoe that's missing a strap to be used for chalitza? So that doesn't make so much sense either. So they say, Dahama Rabbi Yehuda, Nifsachat Chitzonat Tahor, right? Alma Lav Manahu. He really thinks this isn't a shoe. So they can't imagine how if he says this is not a shoe, how could he possibly allow it for chalitza? So now the statement of Rabbi Yochanan doesn't make sense according to the rabbis, doesn't make sense according to Rabbi Yehuda. What are we going to say? So, Olam Aliba de Rabbi Yehuda. Remember where we were trying to go. We were trying to say that the answer to this question, Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rabbi Yehuda, which shows that Rabbi Yochanan must hold like Rabbi Yehuda. So in the end, he does explain it according to Rabbi Yehuda, and we say, and this is what I told you in the beginning, Ema v'chein l'chalitza. Change the version of the Braita, and it should say, and likewise for chalitza. This shoe is ripped, according to Rabbi Yehuda, can't be used for chalitza. Not that it can be used, and not that he agrees with the rabbis. Specifically, it can't be used for chalitza. Now, why was he specifically telling us this? What was the chiddush of Rabbi Yochanan? No. Okay, what does this mean? Rabbi Yochanan was trying to teach us, even though you can swap shoes for chalitza and you can use it on the other foot, that's only when it's fully intact. But if it's broken, you can't, if it's torn, you can't use it for chalitza. And that was his chidush. In any case, what do you see here? You see that Rabbi Yochanan answered his question according to Rabbi Yehuda, who thinks that a shoe that's broken on the outside is not a kli, which then explains why Rav Yosef said to Abai, you can't carry your shoe from the chatzir because your shoe is muktzah, it's not considered a kli since it's broken. And that's Rabbi Yehuda's approach. The rabbis would say it's still a kli because it can be fixed, it can be worn on the other shoe, right? You can flip it around, and therefore any sandal, even if it's broken, is still considered a utensil because it can be fixed. Now the Gemara is going to question this assumption that Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Yehuda. We always say this. We go back to this many, many times. Rabbi Yochanan has an approach that he always holds like a stam mishnah. That means if the mishnah is not attributed to anyone and there's no argument, then he must hold that way. Now we're going to learn a stam mishnah in Kalim, which seems to imply against Rabbi Yehuda. Utznan, sandal shenifsaka achat me'oznav v'tikna tamei midras. If you walk on a sandal, let's say you don't touch it. I don't know, maybe there's a sock in between you and the sandal, and you're not actually physically touching it. You're a zava or a zav or a nida or something that carries tumat midras. You put your weight on this shoe, the shoe becomes tamei tumat midras. But if one of the side, the oznaim, tear, it's still tamei midras because this is classic. It's still considered a kli because only one broke. Nifseka shniaf, the second one tears. Vitiknan, he fixes it. So now, what happened? He fixed the first one. After he fixed the first one, the other one tore. Okay, at this point, clearly one of the outer ones is torn. And he teared the outside is now, or it doesn't matter which one, but at this point, you can't switch your shoe around because, right, according to this, because both were torn at some point. And you fix it, tahor mi l'tamei midras, aval tamei maga midras. Okay, this is no longer, your shoe is no longer going to be tamei tumat midras. We'll see why soon. But it's still tamei maga midras. But what happened? When the shoe is tamei midras, you fixed the other ozen, right? Whatever it is, the handle, let's say. So you fixed the handle. That handle was tamei because it touched the midras, right? The shoe is midras, so it's tamei tumat midras. That touched it. Now you have a new shoe kind of thing because you fixed both oznaim, but the new shoe was touching the strap that you fixed that became tamei, right? The first one that was fixed became tamei midras. That now is mitame, your fixed shoe. So it's not, doesn't have the status of midras, but it's called a rishon l'tuma. Okay, it has status of rishon because it touched something that was tamei midras. This part isn't so significant for our purposes, so let's leave it at that. My love, lo shna pnimi, lo shna chitzoni. Now go back to the first line. What did it say? Nifseka achat me'oznav v'tikna. It doesn't seem to indicate whether it's the inner one or the outer one. So this sounds against Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda would say if it was the outer one, it's now no longer a kli. And this says it's still a kli and it's tamei tumat midras. So, lo shna pnimi, lo shna chitzoni, and therefore it sounds like it's not Rabbi Yehuda. And there's your stam mishnah, not like Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yochanan holds like a stam mishnah. So they say, lo pnimi tafka. No, maybe the mishnah means specifically the inner one, aval chitzonamai, but if it was the outer one, tahor. Even though it didn't say so, maybe that's what it means. But the Gemara doesn't like that because it says, Ihachi aditane, notice the structure. The structure was, in this case, it's tamei. And then it gave us a second case where if the second one also broke and then you fixed it, it would no longer be tamei midras. So once it's already making distinctions and telling you in this case it wouldn't be tamei midras, it theoretically should also have told you if it was the chitzona, it would no longer be tamei midras because it's no longer a shoe. So, the fact that they bring the second line to say, well, in this case, it won't be tamei midras, aval tamei maga midras, niflog bedida. It should have also specified, it should have specifically said Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. If it really was Rabbi Yehuda, it should have said, right? Once the theory is, if the Mishnah doesn't make any distinctions, so fine, we could say it just didn't say so. But here already they're saying this is going to continue to be tamei, and that one's not going to continue to be tamei anymore. And therefore, why didn't it tell us also our situation? What Rabbi Yehuda says, which is if the outer one tore, then it would no longer be tamei, because again, what happens once something breaks, the tuma leaves, it's no longer a utensil anymore. Even if you were to fix it, what's the theory here? I just want to make sure you're very clear on this tumen tower. We're talking about a utensil that was tamei in the beginning, before anything happened, then it broke, then you fixed it. So the question is, when you fix it, does it revert back to its original status? And we're saying, no, it doesn't, because once it broke, the tuma leaves it. What you now have is something new, because you fixed, right? You fixed it. It's now something, it's like a new shoe, basically. Okay, this is like when you send your shoes for refurbishing, right? There's some companies, they'll refurbish your shoes. You end up with a whole brand new shoe. It doesn't look anything like your broken shoe that you had before. They fix the sole, they fix the straps, they fix this, right? It's a new thing. And if it's a new thing, then the old tuma doesn't come back to it. So anyway, they say it should have specified that issue, and therefore it didn't. And therefore it's not Rabbi Yehuda. So now we're stuck. I'm Rabbi Yitzchak ben Yosef, tehema shnatenu b'sandal sheyesh lo arba oznayim v'arba tarziotayim. First, let's start from the end. He says, in order not to create a contradiction between Rabbi Yochanan, when he answered the question there according to Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yochanan, who says halacha kistam mishnah, and this mishnah seems to go against Rabbi Yehuda, well, let's come up with a creative interpretation. He's actually admitting, right? They always do this without actually saying it. In order to resolve this problem, I'd rather not have this contradiction between Rabbi Yochanan to Rabbi Yochanan. Therefore, let's explain the mishnah in some strange case. What's the case? Well, it's not so strange, but when it says one or two, we assumed one or two was 1 out of 2. There's 2 of these on the shoe, and first he broke one, then he broke the other. But now he's saying, let's assume that we're talking about 2 out of 4. So 1 out of 2 broke. Well, even Rabbi Yehuda wouldn't think that's a problem because you still have 1 intact. Let's say we're talking about it could be on the outside. Right? Remember, we said loshna, doesn't matter inner, doesn't matter outer. Then we're going to say, 1 broke. We're not going to consider it anything. Even Rabbi Yehuda will say that's not a problem, even if it's outside, because you still have 2 on the outside. When the second one breaks already, then it becomes a problem. And that's exactly Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda says, 2 break on the outside, it's a problem. Okay? And therefore, we can explain the Mishnah that it is Rabbi Yehuda, and then we no longer have a problem. But now we have another problem, because Ki'ata Ravin Amar Rav Chanan Bar Abba, Ravin brought us some traditions. He says that Rav Chanan Bar Abba says, in the name of Rav, halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda. But Rabbi Yochanan Amar, ein halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda. But now, Ravin brings this tradition that Rabbi Yehuda didn't paskin, that Rabbi Yochanan didn't paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. So now they say, we're going to have a problem with this. Since Rabbi Yochanan answered this question earlier, according to Rabbi Yehuda, doesn't it sound like he holds like Rabbi Yehuda? So how could you say he doesn't? So they very simply answer, there's a machloket about what Rabbi Yochanan actually held. 2 different Amoraim thought that Rabbi Yochanan held different positions. So one is that Rabbi Yochanan held like Rabbi Yehuda, and one is he held not like Rabbi Yehuda. Just to remind you how we got to this, in case you forgot, we started with these 2 stories. One was in a Carmelite, one was in a Chatzer. In the Carmelite, he was allowed to fix it and walk in it. It wasn't viewed as muktzah. In the Chatzer, it was viewed as muktzah, but we overrode muktzah. In the Chatzer, it was viewed as muktzah, and he wasn't allowed to fix it because there was no financial loss. And therefore, Abai started questioning, but isn't this a kli? And the answer given was no. A broken shoe, according to Rabbi Yehuda, if it's on the outside, is not considered a kli anymore. And that's why it's muktzah. That was why we did this whole long thing, just to get to that. Okay, now we're going to have another question. Tnan hatam. It says in the Mishnah, Kol ba'alei batim shiuran kerimonim. Okay, we've talked about this before. There's different vessels with different amounts of, again, we're talking about laws of impurity. Once something's broken, what happened, if the kli was impure to begin with, that's why on the sheet, if you look, I did all these timelines, right? The timelines always start with, first the kli became impure, then the kli broke in some way, So if it's a kli cheres, if you remember, that was the last source we learned about, it needs a hole the size of an olive. Once it has this hole the size of an olive, it's not going to be considered a kli anymore because it can't hold olives. But if it's a kli eitz, okay, a wood vessel, the shiur is going to be a rimon, a pomegranate. Okay, until it has a hole the size of a pomegranate, we're assuming now it's kli ba'alei batim. If you're a specialist and then your kelim are even in smaller hole, you're not going to use anymore. But if you're a regular person, you can use it for all sorts of things. You can use it for rimonim, pomegranates, so even if it has a hole big, so you won't use it for your olives, you use it for your pomegranate. So it says, right, that's it. But by Chizkiah, Rabbi Chizkiah asked the following question. Nikev kemotzi zayit ustamo. Let's say it has a hole the size of a zayit, an olive, and then you fill in the hole. Then right next door, right next to it, chazar v'nikev kemotzi zayit. It gets another hole. V'satmo, and you fix it. This is like the shoe. What happened? One strap tore, you fixed it. The next strap tore, you fixed it, but it's no longer a kli at that point, remember? Even though in the end you have two straps, or in the end when one strap is broken, the other strap is already fixed, it's still viewed as two straps broken. So this is going to be the same kind of question. Basically, you end up filling it in and filling it in and filling it in, right? Until in the end you have a big hole the size of a rimon, but it's all fixed, right? Because you keep patching it up. So each time it's only a small hole, but if you count the entire hole together, it's the size of a pomegranate. So do we say, mahu, do we say that this is no longer a kli? Because even though it's fixed up, what's the issue? You no longer have the original kli that it was. Remember, the kli became tameh to begin with. Now you have a whole new thing because you fixed it up with some other material and it's no longer the original kli. So the question is, do we view it like that? Or do we say, no, in the end, it's a kli and it's usable and it's fixed up. Who cares how big the hole is altogether? So Amalei Rabbi Yochanan, Rebbe Shani Talanu, Sandal Shenifsaka, Chad Me'ozna v'tikna tamei midras. Nifsaka shniya v'tikna tahor min midras, aval tamei maga midras. So he quotes our Mishnah and he says, the Mishnah that we just learned in Kalim, V'amrina lach, mai shna rishona daha kaima shniya. And I said, what's the difference between the first one? In other words, in the second case, when the second strap breaks, the first one is intact. So theoretically, it's really only like one is broken. So what do we say? Nami mitakna rishona, right? My shna rishona dahakaima shniya. When the first one broke, why we say that it's still tameh, still carries tuma? Because the second one was there. Shniya nami mitakna rishona. And when the second one breaks, you still have the first one intact because you fixed it. So why is it different from the two cases? Bamart lan alei, and you said about this, panim chadashot ba'u lekan. You now have a whole new utensil because, right, you have a whole new shoe. This is what I talked about, refurbishing. You have a whole brand new shoe, and therefore, all the tumah that was in it in the first place, that first kli is no longer in existence. This is something new. So the tumah leaves the kli. Likewise, hachanami, I would say the exact same thing with this utensil that you keep fixing up. In the end, panim chadashot ba'u lekan, and it's not going to be considered a kli anymore. Because really, your original kli now has a hole the size of a rimon, even if you fixed it up. So here's his reaction to Rabbi Yochanan. Chizkiah asked this question. Rabbi Yochanan answered it. Chizkiah says, Kari alei, he said about him, Dain bar inish. Late Dain bar inish. You are not human. Okay, this is like saying you are superhuman. Wow, you're like an angel. Igad Amre, some people said, he says, Kigon Dain bar inish. This is like when you say in Hebrew, is a gever, right? This is a real, wow, you're a great person. Okay, so either he said you're not human, or he said, wow, what a great person you are. And Amar Rav Zimuna, this matches the following statement. Im rishonim b'nei melachim, if we treat the earlier people as if they're angels, anu b'nei anashim, we're considered humans. In other words, human as compared to angel, right? The angels are amazing and humans are average. V'im rishonim b'nei anashim, but if you talk about the rishonim as if, whoa, those are amazing people, anu kechamorim. In comparison, we're like donkeys. And by the way, they point out a funny thing. We're not talking about these amazing donkeys. There were some stories told about these donkeys. One of them didn't eat food. And why didn't he eat the food? It turns out they found out later it wasn't Truma and Masra weren't taken. So they say, oh, that donkey was really smart. He knew not to eat it. We're not talking about those. We're basically saying us in comparison to them. So again, are we saying you're an amazing person means, wow, people are amazing and people who are less amazing are kind of like animals? Or is it to say, no, they're like angels and people are average? Okay. Last part for today. actually, we'll quickly finish to the Mishnah. No doch yain v'shemen. Tomorrow's daf is long, so I want to finish to the Mishnah. Pshita. So again, these flasks of wine, isn't it obvious? Because you untie them and tie them every time you want to drink. Lo tzricha de'it tarte one. It's when there's two. There's two openings, and you can basically open one and ignore the other. Mao detem achad minayu b'tule mevatala kamash malan. Again, it's the exact same answer we had in the beginning of the daf. You might have thought one is canceled because you don't use it, because you can only use one maybe. But no, still they're meant to be opened all the time. K'dera shel basar, when you cover your meat, we talked this was like instead of aluminum foil. Pshita, again, you open it all the time, every time you need to get to the food. Lo tzricha de'ipe shlacha. Okay, this is some sort of other opening on the side, some sort of string tying it on the side. Ma'u detema b'tule mevatala, again, kamash malan. Last part for today, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov Omer koshra. He says you can tie the straps for the animal to block the animal from getting out. So again, pshita isn't this obvious. Every time you want to let the animal out, you're obviously going to untie it. Lo tzricha di le tarte isare. It's where there's two, maybe you have two there. Ma'u detema chad minayu b'tule mevatel kamash malan. You might have thought one isn't used, isn't untied all the time. Therefore, they come to tell you, no, both are considered, both are allowed. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rav Yosef, remember who these people are again, because we had a very similar structure to this a few days ago. Rav Yosef says in the name of Rav Yehuda and the name of Shmuel, Halakha to Rav Lezer ben Yaakov. Amar le Abaye, Halakha Michal de Pligi. Did someone actually argue with him? Because it sounded like he was just adding a case, and it sounded like maybe everyone agreed. Abaye wants to know, did anyone disagree with him that you have to say the halacha is like him? Which is exactly what he asked Rav Yosef a few days ago. Amar le, my nafkalach mina. And Rav Yosef responded to him there, here, like there. What's the difference whether someone disagrees or not? I just told you the halacha is that way. And what's Abaye's answer? Amar le, gemara zamorta tehe. What? My learning is supposed to just be like a song, and it's just, I'm just kind of chanting it without actually understanding the meaning. And I can't remember if I gave this explanation last time, but some people say it's actually a bird, like what's called a zmira. I think there's a bird, something of that form, that it's just a bird chirp, right? Now the bird just mumbles things that people say without actually understanding what they're saying. I'm not just a bird that's, kind of muttering things, but I want to really understand, and therefore, that's why I'm asking. Okay, with this we'll end. Shabbat shalom to everyone, and we'll pick up from here tomorrow in the next shiur.